Each year, students enter their new classrooms with a variety of interests, abilities, learning styles, and backgrounds that influence the way they learn and respond to instruction. As teachers, it is essential to identify the unique characteristics of our students and implement instruction that reaches each child. In order to address the needs of our diverse student population, we can use research-based pedagogy to differentiate learning experiences and establish an environment where all students have the opportunity to succeed. In recent decades, educators have recognized the need for change and innovation in the classroom in order to meet the demands of diversity. Tomlinson, a leader in education, initiated and fostered the concept of differentiation. She explained that since students differ in their interests, abilities, academic readiness, and proclivity for learning, they also differ in the way they learn and process information. King-Shaver defines differentiation as the deliberate and conscious method of planning and teaching that provides multiple avenues of learning toward clearly defined goals. Research has distinctly illustrated the benefits and success of differentiated instruction. In one study, researchers evaluated the effectiveness of using differentiated instruction to promote reading in the classroom. The children were given choices of reading material, methods of reflection, and ways to demonstrate what they had learned. At the end of the experiment, 84.3% of the students' grades improved. In a different study, researchers found that students who received differentiated math instruction outperformed the students who received traditional instruction on their final culminating exam. Additional research has also shown that teachers practicing differentiated instruction witnessed a decline in discipline referrals and improvement in their students' reading, writing, and math performance. The purpose of differentiated instruction is to ensure that every student has an opportunity to learn. When the content, process, and products of learning are differentiated to address the needs of students, low-level learners are able to achieve success, while on-level learners are challenged beyond what is expected. Instead of idly passing time in class, gifted students are able to participate in enrichment activities and advance in their learning. As we begin to implement differentiation in our classrooms, we must first consider the elements of multiculturalism, multiple intelligences, and tiered learning. In today's diverse classrooms, students of varying ethnicities, cultures, and races come together to learn, charging us with the responsibility to empower each of our students and embrace multiculturalism. Suraj, Bean, Lee, and Burley define multiculturalism as the attitudes, beliefs, values, and policies that affirm inclusivity of diverse cultures. A pivotal component of differentiation is guiding our students to appreciate the differences of others and to value justice, equality, and freedom. By implementing a multicultural curriculum, we can help our students develop an awareness of multiple perspectives and the ability to discern how cultural and ethnic backgrounds affect values, attitudes, and behaviors. As a result, students are prepared to think critically and become active members of society. As we approach multiculturalism in our classrooms, it is essential to first establish high expectations for all of our students, despite stereotypical assumptions or past academic performance. When planning lessons, the content and instructional materials should reflect the experiences and cultures of various ethnic groups, which will help students develop an understanding of diverse perspectives. Lastly, instructional strategies should be varied to meet the learning and cultural needs of all students. By practicing and implementing these techniques, our students will come to appreciate the diversity among their classmates and society as a whole. One strategy that I use to promote multiculturalism in my classroom is the use of multicultural literature that exposes students to new viewpoints. For example, during a social studies unit on the events surrounding the Civil War, students are often introduced to the facts regarding slavery. However, they are rarely exposed to the perspective of what it was like for a slave to escape and run to freedom. To help my students develop a complete understanding of the severe circumstances leading up to the Civil War, I would read the book Henry's Freedom Box, A True Story from the Underground Railroad, and hold a discussion about justice. By exposing my students to the true story of a slave who traveled in a box to gain his freedom, they will come to understand why it was so important for men and women to fight for the rights and freedom of slaves. Another way we can differentiate instruction is by considering the various intelligences and learning styles of students. Howard Gardner, a leading developmental psychologist, proposed the theory of multiple intelligences in 1983 after recognizing that human intelligence extends beyond an IQ score. His theory identifies 8 different forms of intelligence that people have the capacity to possess, including interpersonal, logical mathematical, verbal linguistic, musical, bodily kinesthetic, naturalistic, intrapersonal, and visual spatial intelligence. Each person has the capacity to learn and perform in all the intelligences, yet students often excel in two or more particular areas. Similarly, students possess preferred learning styles in accordance with their primary areas of intelligence that can impact their studies in the classroom. Katsioladis and Fonts define learning styles as personal qualities that influence the way students interact with their learning environment, peers, and teachers. Students range from being visual, auditory, and kinesthetic learners, and while one method may be preferred, students are capable of learning in all three styles. In my classroom, I address the various intelligences and learning styles during social studies by presenting content in multiple fashions and providing several options for the students to process and demonstrate their learning. For example, to introduce a unit on the various types of communities, I would first lead my students in a walk around the school and guide them in identifying the characteristics of their own community. I would then present the main characteristics of rural, urban, and suburban communities, as the students created a content organizer. I would also share pictures and videos to make the learning relevant and applicable for the class. To help the students form deeper connections, I would assign each student a particular community to read about in the textbook and research further on the iPad. I would then give the students time to share what they learned with their table group. For the final project, students would be given a choice between creating and performing a song, writing and presenting a speech, or developing and sharing a collage that highlights specific examples of each type of community that was explored in class. By matching instruction to the way students learn, the curriculum will become meaningful, personalized, and relevant. The final element of differentiation to consider is response to intervention, or tiered learning. Stewart and Rinaldi define RTI as a multi-tiered system that addresses the academic needs of all students by using evidence-based instructional practice, progress monitoring, and data-informed instructional problem solving. At Tier 1, effective and research-based instruction is delivered in the general classroom. Students who continue to struggle after the initial teaching enter Tier 2, where teachers and specialists work together to target the students' specific learning needs through small group and individual instruction. If progress reports show that students are still struggling and falling behind in their learning, they enter Tier 3 and receive additional help along with their core instruction in the classroom. The goal of RTI programs is to provide individualized intervention for students who may be falling behind, while still maintaining differentiated and superior instruction in the classroom. Tiered learning provides quality instruction and universal screenings for all children, while still addressing the needs of struggling learners. Because these students are identified early in the learning process, individualized interventions can be provided to address areas of disequilibrium and help prevent a later referral to special education. RTI also ensures that database documentation is kept for each student, providing a record of progress and growth throughout the year. In my social studies instruction, I use tiered learning to certify that each student meets the learning objectives. During a lesson on the 6 landform regions of South Carolina, I would first begin with whole class instruction that addresses various intelligences and learning styles. For example, I would show a visual guide with the landform regions and teach my students a song with different hand motions before assigning a research web quest. During the lesson, I would collect data through informal assessments and checklists to monitor for understanding. I would then be able to place struggling students into small groups for additional instruction and practice to address any misconceptions. These students may simply need to listen to the information again, or perhaps create a picture to help them remember the landform regions. Lastly, I would be able to easily identify students who are still struggling and plan individualized instruction to meet their needs. By providing deliberate and timely assistance, I would ensure that early misconceptions were addressed and that students had a firm understanding of the content. Imagine instructing a group of students to run a lap around the track as fast as they can while still finishing at the same time as their classmates. The students would ask how that could even be possible because they know that everybody runs at different speeds. We would never expect all of our students to complete a running race at the same time. Yet for years, educators have expected all of their students to learn the same way and at the same pace. After examining the benefits and success of differentiation in its various components, we can no longer treat learning as one size fits all. As teachers, our goal is to meet students where they are in their learning and design instruction that meets their individual needs. By integrating research-based theories and strategies into our lessons, we will be able to guide our students in their educational journey and help them achieve success.